The quarterback position is without a doubt the most famous position in all of sports, and the value of having an elite quarterback is the highest it's ever been. Teams are desperate for their franchise guy and they're willing to trade or pay whatever it takes. And sometimes it pays off, like spending a top pick on the guy that you feel like can change your franchise. And other times, you're stuck paying a fully guaranteed contract for a guy who helps speedrun your franchise straight into the dirt. Teams know that to win the big game, you have to have one of the best in the business, and to me, these 10 quarterbacks are all some of the best in the business. My honorable mentions before we get started are Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. Both of these guys have completely revived their careers in two totally different ways. They've turned into two of the best stories in the NFL, and although both of these guys missed the top 10 list, I think both of them are very solid quarterbacks. They can both put up some really good numbers, like Baker's 41 touchdown passes that were only second behind Joe Burrow. Geno Smith had one of the best deep balls in all of the league, sporting that 95.1 PFF grade, while his 9 touchdowns on deep passes were 4th in the league. Both quarterbacks I think are very good, but they just didn't quite make the cut. CJ Stroud's second year in the NFL wasn't quite what it was in his rookie year. It was filled with some of the worst offensive line play in the league, and all 3 of his top receivers went down with injury. It would be hard for any quarterback to replicate the success they had the year before, and again, throwing behind one of the worst lines in football, he was sacked 63 times, which was second most, only behind Caleb Williams. And when defensive lines beat the Texans' offensive line, there was no escape for Stroud. His pressure sack rate was the 4th highest in football, but PFF still had him as the 10th best passer in the league. And when Stroud had time in 2024, he flashed those elite traits. He was 5th in big-time throw percentage, but losing Stephon Diggs halfway through the year to a torn ACL, Nico Collins for multiple weeks, and Tank Dell towards the end of the year really hurt Stroud and the offense as it eliminated the explosive plays we saw back in 2023. And with new offensive coordinator Nick Caley from the Rams, I think this will fix the problem. Caley was the pass game coordinator in LA with Sean McVay, and I think he will make CJ take that step up into that top 5, top 7 quarterback range. But we know that CJ Stroud has the potential to be the franchise guy. I need him to improve his pocket awareness and his accuracy at times because both looked shaky every now and then. But for the most part, Stroud is calm. His arm talent is excellent, and he's smart enough before the snap. The Texans tried to improve their offensive line by adding Cam Robinson and Laken Tomlinson, as well as drafting second-round pick Ayante Irsay from Minnesota. And Nico Collins has become the alpha wide receiver 1 for Houston. They also added Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, who I like a lot, and they traded a 7th-round pick for slot wide receiver Christian Kirk. And so my expectations for Stroud are high. The AFC South is getting better every single year. You have Cam Ward, who just went number 1 overall, and this is really a make-or-break year for quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and Anthony Richardson. The AFC in general is a dogfight every single year, and I would really love Houston to give one of those big 3 teams a run for their money and fight for that first AFC title appearance in team history. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders were the best story in the NFL a year ago. Jaden Daniels led them to an NFC title game and shocked the world against the number 1 seeded Detroit Lions in Ford Field. Daniels led multiple comebacks and last-second heroics to put the Commanders not only in the playoffs but give them a deep run. And the rookie was nothing short of sensational in 2024, winning Rookie of the Year. But in 2025, there are new expectations for not only him but the Commanders as a team. Daniels was wildly efficient in almost every single metric, and his ability to avoid sacks was possibly his best trait. He was the 4th highest graded runner in 2024, and he ran for over 1,000 yards in the regular season and the playoffs. Running isn't all of Daniels' game. He was graded 4th as a passer per PFF. He was 6th in EPA per dropback and 6th in total EPA. Daniels did this with a below-average line and a pretty terrible running back room. So what's stopping Jaden Daniels from becoming a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league? And well, the answer is only himself right now. He was very reliant on his first read, and his deep ball was not very strong. His 46% catchable ball rate on deep passes was 30 out of 33 qualified quarterbacks, and he liked to keep plays alive for a little too long. You saw that with Caleb Williams. You do with most young quarterbacks, but he tended to run into his own sacks, and for his offensive line that already wasn't very good, he's going to have to get better at that, but that is something I believe in him to improve with. And So the expectations around Jaden Daniels have skyrocketed, but there's no certainty that Daniels will be able to recreate his awesome rookie season. Some of the Commanders' game was unsustainable, like their efficiency on fourth down, and some of the insane wins that Washington had that will not be able to be recreated. I need to see Daniels improve his deep ball, and I need to see him improve after his first read. Too many times I saw his first read not be there, and he would run, and against a much harder schedule this year, he won't be able to do that. Washington, however, did give him some help. They traded for Deebo Samuel, and although he's not quite what he once was, elite quarterbacks can raise the floor of their guys, and if Daniels wants to be elite, then he will be able to elevate a guy like Deebo Samuel. And the tackle duo will not need any elevating. They traded for Laramie Tunsil and drafted Oregon tackle in the first round, Josh Connerly Jr. I have concerns with the pass catchers outside of Terry McLaurin, but I don't have any concerns with Jaden Daniels in Washington. The newest Super Bowl MVP comes in at number 8 on this list, and it's because of what he did in the last 2 games. Jalen Hurts once again played his best ball in the biggest moment. He was lights out in the final 2 games for Philly, and he won his first Super Bowl. It puts Hurts in a tough spot to rank. Ranking him lower because his team is elite feels ignorant, but at the same time, he just doesn't quite do what everyone else ahead of him on my list does. The Eagles have done an amazing job at putting Jalen Hurts in a situation to succeed. He has the top 2 wide receiver duo with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. He has the best offensive line and the best running back in football. I fully expect Jalen Hurts to keep his top 10 play up for years to come, and he is a very good rusher by himself. He had the 5th best rushing grade per PFF in 2024, and him using his legs is a massive part to the Eagles offense. We know about the tush push. It is one of the most efficient plays in NFL history. It piles onto his rushing touchdown numbers, and it always works. But when Jalen Hurts is throwing the ball, he's also one of the best in the league when he's under pressure. His plus 4.2% completion percentage over expected was second among qualified passers, as was his off-target percentage while under pressure as well. He thrives under pressure in a game scenario and when his legacy's on the line. The NFC title was a game that Philly fans will probably remember for life. He was highly efficient through the air, threw a touchdown, while adding 3 more touchdowns on the ground. But for Hurts, it wasn't going to stop in the NFC title game, as he played maybe an even better Super Bowl against a much better Chiefs team. He became a Super Bowl winning quarterback and locked himself into Philadelphia sports history with a masterful performance. I do need Hurts to stop running into sacks. That was a big problem for him in 2024, and I need him to be more accurate throwing the ball over the middle and deep down the field. Outside of A.J. Brown, nobody was really able to haul deep passes in, and most of it was due to Hurts' inaccuracies. But I have no concerns about Jalen Hurts, and I have no concerns about the Eagles team to win. Having Jalen Hurts in big moments is a massive advantage that a lot of other teams do not have. Dak Prescott was on pace for the worst year of his career in 2024, but looking under the hood, he was really the least of the Cowboys' offensive concerns. He had a tight window percentage of 21.2%, which led the league by a considerable amount. The Cowboys also had an average separation of 3.1 yards, which was second worst in the NFL. So the question is, why is Dak in the top 7 of these rankings? Well, he still managed a positive completion percentage over expected at 1.8 in 2024, and his deep ball was still one of the best ones in football. Despite the lack of separation, his catchable ball rate was in the top 5, and his off-target rate was in the top 4. And obviously, Dak Prescott is not perfect. I would love for him to throw the ball away. It's a problem he's had since the beginning of his career, where he just doesn't quite let plays die, and I would love for him to start using his legs. And I know that's probably a much tougher ask. I know he has a hard time trusting his legs with all the lower body injuries Dak Prescott's had, but the offense is much cleaner and smoother when Dak does decide to use his legs. In 2023, Dak Prescott had a strong argument for MVP of the league. He was throwing to the always elite CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and a Jake Ferguson that was improving every single week. Last year, though, Mike McCarthy's scheme got stale. Brandon Cooks was used differently, and Jake Ferguson had a disaster of a year. But 2025 should be a return to form year, not just for Dak, but for the Cowboys offense as a whole. Replacing Cooks with the best contested catch guy in the league in George Pickens will help transform this passing attack from one of the worst to maybe the best in football. Matthew Stafford is an ageless wonder, as I have him as the best quarterback in the NFC at age 37. Stafford still has some of the best arm talent in the league, with his 62% catchable ball rate on deep throws without pressure, and that was 7th out of 33. His highly accurate throw rate on these passes was the highest in the NFL, and he was still elite throwing the play action as well. He was graded out top 5 with an 87.8 grade. Looking at Stafford's numbers, however, this was probably his worst year in the NFL since 2018. His yards, EPA, and EPA per dropback were all the lowest they've been since his healthy seasons back in 2018. And Stafford is clearly aging, but putting him at 6 could blow up in my face. He could have a terrible year and really show his age, but I think he's in a great spot. McVay is a top 3 coach in football, and you have Puka Nacua, and then you add Devontae Adams, you're going to have one of the best offenses in football. Stafford's also clearly a playoff riser. That's not something that many quarterbacks, including some of the guys on this list, can say. Stafford so clearly plays his best football in January, it's why he's all the way up at 6, but I would love for him to play at the level he does in January in September. Justin Herbert had a dreadful second career playoff game against the Houston Texans, a game where he threw 4 interceptions, and now he's 0-2 in the playoffs, and both losses have come in rather embarrassing fashion. Herbert in 2024, though, had the most efficient year as a starter. He threw the least amount of interceptions in his career, and he had the highest passer rating of his career. Herbert can really do it all, and the stats will back me up. The PFF had him graded 3rd as a passer, and he was 5th in big-time throw percentage. The addition of Jim Harbaugh completely transformed how Herbert played. Pre-Harbaugh, Herbert was a gunslinger, and when Harbaugh joined last year, Herbert became much more balanced and elite, throwing the football to all 3 levels of the field. Herbert dealt with 31 drops in 2024, and it was the 2nd most in football with the 4th highest drop rate. And if you had nameless numbers for all different types of stats, Justin Herbert's would be the one you pick for a majority of these stats. He's elite at throwing short, under pressure, over the middle, and he has one of the best deep balls in the sport. I could talk about how productive Justin Herbert is and how good he is for hours, but I need to see him play good football when everyone is watching. He hasn't played well enough in the biggest games of his NFL career, and it's made the discourse around him unbearable, because I believe that Justin Herbert is an elite quarterback. I just need other people to see it too. One of only 2 quarterbacks left on this list that have been to a Super Bowl, Joe Burrow comes in at number 4 on my list. Joe Burrow had an unforgettable season in 2024, putting up some of the best numbers of his career, and if there was any doubt that he wasn't, Burrow locked himself into the elite tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. Joe Burrow led the league in touchdowns and yards, while both of these numbers were also a career high. Joe Burrow had the elite receiver duo of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but he still lacked that really good run game, and he had the worst defense of his career. Joe Burrow was made responsible for winning games with the 23rd best rushing attack and the bottom 5 defense in the NFL. Burrow didn't disappoint. He had the best year of his career, and even though the Bengals missed the playoffs, it had nothing to do with Joe Burrow. Burrow graded out as the 2nd best passer on PFF and having the 2nd most big-time throws in the league. His 9 deep ball touchdowns were tied for 4th, and his 12 touchdown passes in the intermediate level were tied for 2nd. Burrow did all of this while keeping the interceptions to a minimum, throwing the least amount of interceptions in his career where he's been able to stay healthy. 2025, though, could be the exact same for not just Joe Burrow, but for the Bengals. They extended T. Higgins, and they tried to improve their guard situation, but for the most part, they're running it back on offense, and their defense will still be near the bottom of the league. I have serious questions about their run game, and I don't know how confident I am in Zach Taylor. But Joe Burrow did play like the best quarterback in football a year ago, so who's to say he can't do it again? The 2024 NFL MVP kicks off the top 3 on my list, as Josh Allen had a complete change of play in 2024. He was the true gunslinger from college all the way up through his first 5 years in the league. But in 2024, Allen changed his style of play in a very sustainable way. He kept his fantastic rushing ability intact, but he almost completely eliminated the turnovers that had plagued him in years past. Josh Allen has one of, if not the best arm in football and still refused to turn the ball over. In 2024, his counting numbers were statistically the worst they'd looked since his first full starting year in 2019. But when you take a closer look into Josh Allen's 2024, you can see why he won the MVP. And even though the gunslinger mindset was neutralized, Allen's ability wasn't. He had the second highest passing grade on deep balls in 2024. He had by far the most big-time throws on deep balls and the fifth best turnover-worthy plays. His .25 EPA per dropback were tied for the highest of his career, and it was good enough for second in the league. But Allen didn't just use his arm. He was the highest-graded scrambler in 2024, rushing for 636 yards with 14 touchdowns and forcing 24 missed tackles with 385 yards after contact. However, it's not all rainbows and sunshine for Josh Allen. He's yet to play in the big game, but he's on pace to become a Hall of Famer regardless. He's had a remarkable start to his career, but it's not just that. He's grown so much from the gunslinger, high-risk, upside quarterback to now MVP of the league and trying to win a Super Bowl. The two-time MVP and the 2024 MVP runner-up Lamar Jackson comes in at number 2 on my list. Lamar Jackson is the greatest dual threat in NFL history. He has become just as electric as a runner as he is as a passer. Adding Derrick Henry to the Ravens offense made them almost unstoppable, and Lamar, he was still the biggest reason why. Lamar Jackson threw for a career high in touchdowns and a career low in interceptions. He had the highest quarterback rating, and he threw for 4,000 yards for the first time in his career. He also had the highest percentage of big-time throws in his career and the lowest turnover-worthy play percentage of his career. The leap Lamar took to go from a good passer to an elite passer is why he lands at 2 and not at 4. The question Lamar had was always his throwing ability coming out of college. It was never his rushing ability, and I think he had joined that elite tier in this past season. Lamar Jackson led a lot of categories in 2024 when it came to passing efficiency. He led all quarterbacks in EPA per dropback, and air yards per attempt. That's just to name a few. But we can't talk about Lamar Jackson without his ability to rush the ball. He was third in rushing grade among all quarterbacks, and he led all quarterbacks in yards with over 1,000, including the postseason, and that is the third time he's hit the 1K number in his career. Lamar Jackson forced 50 missed tackles, which was second among all quarterbacks, and his 4th touchdowns were tied for 4th. His 40 20-plus runs were far and away the most among all quarterbacks, and his breakaway percentage was 26.2, which was more than double second place, which was Jalen Hurts at 12. Lamar has been and clearly is the most explosive quarterback with his legs, and him throwing over the middle was just as good as his ability to rush. He was absolutely absurd. He threw 19 touchdowns to 1 interception and had the highest passer rating in the league with a 149.1. And adding Derrick Henry can change your ground game, but it also transformed the passing game just as much. Lamar was the second best in the league using play action to previously mentioned Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson threw 15 more touchdowns to 1 interception using the play action, and he was 5th in big-time throws. Lamar Jackson is a guy I could talk on and on about for, but the only thing stopping him from being number 1 is his ability in the playoffs. Lamar has had a lot of good teams. He's been the 2-time MVP, and he's not been able to beat the likes of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And when he did beat Josh Allen, it was back in 2020, but outside of that, the Ravens have run into the Chiefs, and they have not been able to get it out, and so that's why Lamar isn't at 1. But this year, this Ravens team, I think, is the most complete it's ever been, and I think they're the best team in the AFC. I'd also think they'll land the 1 seed again, so with the AFC running through Baltimore in 2025, how far can Lamar Jackson go? A 2-time MVP, a 3-time Super Bowl champion, a 3-time Super Bowl MVP, a 5-time AFC title winner, and the 2018 Offensive Player of the Year, along with 6 Pro Bowls to his name, Patrick Mahomes is a top 2 quarterback of all time before turning 30 years old. The future first ballot Hall of Famer is the consensus quarterback 1 in the NFL after the worst statistical season of his career, but he still made it back to the Super Bowl. And 2024 Mahomes was odd. He was obviously still great. He left his mark on almost every single game, but the explosive plays really weren't there, and he had multiple career lows in different statistics, but at the same time, he delivered when the Chiefs needed him to, and his advanced numbers were still objectively solid. He was a top 10 quarterback in EPA and EPA per dropback, while still being one of the best quarterbacks in the league versus the blitz. He still had the 8th best passing grade per PFF, but I do think Nagy and the injuries to his receiver core, along with Travis Kelce's disgusting regression, have hurt him in the big play department, along in the deficiency department. But the Chiefs gave him a new right tackle in the draft in Josh Simmons, and they paid their superstar guard Trey Smith. That's got the trenches on the offensive side set for years to come. If Rashee Rice can fix his off-the-field stuff and get healthy, then I believe this offense will look a lot more like it did in the 2020s. I love Rashee Rice. I think his route tree is strong, and Mahomes has proven he doesn't need elite talent to win big games. He just needs minimal help. In 2025, I really want to see the explosive plays return for the Chiefs, and I think it's almost a given if everyone can stay relatively healthy. Xavier Worthy is one of the fastest guys in football. You have Rashee Rice, you have Hollywood Brown, and those guys can beat you at all 3 levels of the field. I also love their Jalen Royals pick out of Utah State, and so Patrick Mahomes is still number 1 on my list, not only because of what he's accomplished, but of what he can still accomplish. The AFC runs through Mahomes, and it has since 2021. I doubt Patrick Mahomes is done doing unbelievable things every week and every year, and I don't doubt the Chiefs will be playing in February in the coming years again. So those are my picks for the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and I want to know, what did you think of my list? What did I get right? Who did I snub? And maybe you think I ranked someone too high or too low. Let me know your top 10 in the comments. I'd love to hear your takes, and I'll gladly respond to each and every single one of y'all. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. I make videos. I'm trying to get back into this as the season gets closer, and I'll catch y'all later.